Today we got the MOZA CRP pedals up for review. I spent some time with these pedals. It was just about a couple of hours playing ACC, and these pedals were actually quite amazing. So I would really like to begin this video with what exactly you get in the box and is it actually worth it or not. So you get 3 pedals. We are talking about the accelerator, brake, and the clutch. And of course you got this nice pedal tray, which of course I'm gonna be discussing in detail a little bit later. And on top of that you get an additional spring that you can choose when you're setting up your brakes. I also think this is a pretty nice feature, and well, it's a little bit harder spring, so in my personal opinion I would actually use this one as a preload rather than the one that it's already installed. I tried the one that it's already installed, and you know, by default it's actually a pretty decent one, but I do prefer a little bit firmer preload. In my opinion, it is a little bit better and it's going to give you a better feel of the brakes. So what are we actually going to begin with? And these are the pedals itself. You got the acceleration, the brake, and the clutch pedal. In general, these are 3 separate pedals and you can mount them individually or you can mount them on this mount tray. In my opinion, you don't really need this one unless you don't really have a rig and you don't have the place to mount it. I guess you can use it on the floor. It's quite okay, but if we flip it on another side, I think this one or equipment from Moza is specifically made for rigs, because you can see that if you move this on, well, if you just put this on the floor, it's going to move a lot because there are no rubbers on the bottom side. And to be honest, I wouldn't buy these pedals unless you have a rig, which again, I mean, you can probably mount them in some way, but it's really going to move a lot. So I do not suggest it because they do not have these rubber pads on the bottom. But again, let's begin with the mounting, and let's just begin what exactly makes these pedals special. So on each side we have 3 mounting holes that are actually going to make it really stable, and I don't think it's quite necessary, but again, it's nice to have so many holes on one side. In general, you can only mount it with 2 holes, and you can of course move the pedals from one side to another, or you can move it up and down. It really depends on how you like it, and it really depends on how you want your pedals to be positioned. In my personal opinion, by default, just putting all 6 bolts in is just about enough. You know, it's up to you. This is completely personal preference. You can move these pedals, and in general, it's up to you to decide if you want to move it or not. In my opinion, I didn't move it. I just installed it as it is, and it was actually working pretty well. We can start with the acceleration pedal, and you can also see there is something in common with all of these pedals, and you can also change the angle of these plates. So you get all of the tools necessary to do it. I'm gonna now show you that it's actually quite simple. So you just need to unscrew this first one, and then you can see it's actually quite easy to unscrew. And then you have from the front, you just need a different wrench, which is also included in the package. And then you just plug it in and see, okay, maybe I need a different angle, and you will be able to see that the angle of the pedal is changing. In my personal opinion, I like it the way it is, but you can of course change it to whatever you want. So we can say that you want it like this. Of course, I don't think this is quite useful, but if someone wants it, you can get it. And in general, you can see that the angle now of the pedal is much different than what it used to be. Now, of course, if you want to put it back in, of course, screw it in, and that's about it. Now you got the pedal, which is, well, in a completely different angle than what it used to be. And on top of that, you can change the positioning of the spring of the throttle pedal, which is then again going to require some modification. We can just move this from one side to another, and you can see there is a little hole in here. Let's try to move it a little bit. Okay, it's quite stiff actually, but we can find a hole. So the default one is always the one in the middle, and then you can adjust whatever you like. So if you like a little bit more or you like a little bit less, it always depends on your own personal preference. But let's see if we want to move it to a different hole. And okay, so in general, you need to be quite precise when you're doing this, otherwise it won't fit. So everything is very, very precise. And then again, you just put the bolt back in. That's about it. So now you got the fully functioning accelerator pedal, which of course you can change. So the brake pedal is actually quite stiff by default. But again, it's about a load cell pedal, and load cell is just about 200 kilos. So all of the information is going to be on the website as well. And this is the information that I picked up from their website and about this product. So 200 kilos, I don't think you even need 50, but okay, if you want more, you got more, and especially with these pedals you got 200, so you don't have to worry about if it's going to be enough or not. What exactly can you change about these pedals, and what can you change about the brake pedal? We talked about you can change the angle of the plate, and pretty much that's about it. But what if you decide to change something else, and if you do not like the pedal? So there are actually two options. You got the black one and you got the red one. The red one is actually pretty stiff. I think the default one that is already installed, it's a pretty decent one, but if someone likes to change it, you can of course change it. So the procedure is pretty much the same as with the throttle pedal. So let's have a look. And then you can simply unscrew the pedal, or you can simply unscrew this one. And there it goes. I'm using 2 wrenches here just to make it a little bit more simple. The spring should come out. And yes, it does. Change it, let's say, to the red one. Just put it back in. This thing is going back into place. And then we need to place it in the way so we can screw it back in. It's not as simple as possible, so I think this procedure could have been a little bit more simple, but it is the way it is, I guess. So trying to move it back in place. Actually, moving it back in place is quite easier than the first step or the first approach that I've done. Move it back in here, screw it back in. So okay, now we can put the tools to a side, and now you can see that we actually managed to change the spring on the brake pedal. We also changed the angle on the accelerator pedal. Not exactly the thing that you are looking for, so you can of course change it to your own personal preference. I do like to keep it at default, and of course I think default or basically what it is straight out of the box is pretty useful. So let's go to the clutch pedal. Now you can see that the clutch isn't much different than the usual clutch. So you can press the clutch, you can see actually how it goes up and down, and that's pretty much about it. So in general, we can change the face plates, we can just change the angles of those, we can change the spring, we can, well, we can do all sorts of modification, but as I said before, straight out of the box, I think it's the best option. I do like this one. It's actually a pretty interesting one, and I do recommend kind of a firmer preload springs. So if you, let's say, want to connect the clutch and the brakes, usually the main board is in the brakes, so there is actually a hole that goes through the clutch into the brake pedal. So the wire isn't exactly going to go over the clutch pedal or just on the front side of the clutch pedal. It's actually going to go through the clutch pedal. You can actually see that that's a hole right here. So the hole is right here, and then you just simply put the wire in, and it goes through the clutch into the brake pedal. And that's about it. So I think it's a pretty simple but also clever design, and it saves you a lot of time. So if you forget, let's say, to plug something in, if you want to change something, the USB is just about there. But what is also very smart about the USB is an L-shaped USB. So if you need to plug something in, and then we can see that it's not going to bother us in any way, shape or form. So USB goes out. If you, for example, forget something and you're connecting it directly to the base, you're going USB goes directly into the PC, and there it is. So if you need to change something, of course, it's simple as it gets. I try to use these pedals on the track, and I also try to go through the Moza Pit House. And now if we go to Moza Pit House, you will be able to see that actually this is quite easy to manage, and the pedals only need one click to activate. So when you get into the first starting screen, you will only have to press one button to make these pedals work. So they are connected directly to the PC. And now I have, well, I do have a couple of options in here, which I would really like to show you. So in general, you can adjust the clutch, you can adjust the brakes, and you can adjust the throttle pedal. So it all depends on your own personal preference and what you like. But in general, I like to have a linear output curve as well as with the brakes and the throttle. And to be honest, I'm not really using the clutch. Sometimes I'm using it, but not exactly not exactly when I'm racing, especially not GT3s. You can pretty much choose whatever you like. Same goes with the acceleration. I will go back to linear because I really like it like that. And of course, you can just adjust the output curve for the brakes, and you can say, let's say we're gonna have it like this. I don't know why, but in general, if someone likes it, someone likes it. So I'm not gonna argue on that one. So in general, you can just press it and you can see how the curve is going up and down. Same goes with the different two options that you have available, or you can, let's say, adjust it on your own. I'm not exactly sure why would you do this, but okay, I like to keep it linear. So same goes with the throttle pedal. I like to keep it linear, and pretty much the same thing goes up and down. And as you can see, it's as simple as that. So, and if you're playing a couple of games, you can just go back to default settings. You can import your settings like I did. I just have like a couple of settings. If I'm, let's say, you have a couple of default ones that you can use, like performance, karting, rally. I did save this digit one, and I got this GT digit one, which is a little bit different, but in general, it's pretty much the same thing. And of course, you can save your settings by clicking on save. You just type in, let's say, GT, and you click on save. I'm not going to overwrite my previous one, so we're clicking cancel. So in general, if you're playing a couple of games, I think this feature can be quite useful. And I have also spent some time on the circuit, and it took me no more than an hour to get used to these pedals. Usually it takes me a little bit more, but these pedals were actually quite precise, and I had no problem of getting used to them. In general, when it comes to this middle section of the circuit, trail braking is quite important, and it took me no more than a couple of laps to get used to this middle section while applying just about 25 to 50% of braking. And especially when I was going, of course, out of these corners, acceleration was once again very precise. So, if I need to sum it up, I would say that the pedals will give you the necessary precision you need, and especially here, where just like a couple of percent of difference will make a significant impact on your lap times. And here you can pretty much see that the lap times were very consistent, and I was just about 20 thousandths of a second behind my previous best time. And of course, when you need to carry that speed, and when the car is kind of losing the back end, it's incredibly important to control the back end. And to be honest, I would say that these pedals really help me with that. I'm not saying that for everyone, just about 5 to 10% is going to make a difference, but for example, when you apply 80 to 85% of power, you need to know that you're applying 80 to 85% of power. And it's really about that precision that is going to help you to maintain performance and of course to maintain pace, well, in the long run. So especially when the back of the car starts to slide, you need to know, okay, why is the car sliding? Maybe I need to apply a little bit more, or I need to, let's say, lift my foot off the accelerator. And for me, those are the things that I'm looking for in a quality pedal set. Otherwise, I mean, I might as well use some cheap pedals. If they don't provide me that performance boost and that precision, I really don't have a good reason to use them. But in general, these pedals provided me with precision and in general very, very competitive lap times. So in my opinion, the acceleration, the braking, the clutch, everything feels just about the right. And it's pretty much up to you to see exactly what are you looking for, what are going to be your positives, what are going to be your negatives, if you like the design, if you don't like the design. So it's on all kind of personal preference. In my opinion, I think these pedals look pretty good. They're fairly priced. And in general, I'm kind of in this neutral zone to decide which way I'm going to go. I think these are actually a pretty good option. But if we go to the one negative thing that I found about this pedal tray, that it actually bends a little bit when you brake hard. Of course, you don't necessarily have to use it. You can mount these pedals individually, so I'm not going to say this is a big negative. It did bend a little bit, but in my opinion, I didn't really feel it. And once you get used to it, it's kind of normal. You don't necessarily have to use it. It comes in the package, so you might use it. And when it comes to the braking performance, I never found that it was anything bad about it. And this is something that I found when I was making this video. I was watching the footage and then I realized that the pedals are actually bending a little bit. Otherwise, performance-wise, I felt absolutely no difference. You have a nice looking set of pedals, which is fairly priced. You have all sorts of modifications, you get all of the tools necessary to make this thing work, and you actually get a nice pedal tray, which can be mounted on pretty much any rig out there. So you can adjust the clutch, you can adjust the braking pedal, and you can adjust the accelerator pedal. And once again, it's pretty much about personal preference. You can adjust the stiffness, you can adjust the treble, you can pretty much do anything you want with these pedals. So I think those are all the positives. So if we once again flip it to another side, I think this is a pretty smart design. I know it's pretty standard these days, but some pedals don't have this. So some pedals don't have, let's say, a hole that is going through the clutch pedal directly into the braking pedal, which is usually the main board. But then again, I mean, in my opinion, the conclusion would be these pedals are fairly priced. They're going for $500 US. Unfortunately, they are not PlayStation compatible, so they're not for consoles. You can use them on PC and they work really well in PC, and you can adjust them to your own personal preference. So in my opinion, you can go check out these pedals. I would give them, in my opinion, it's 8.5 out of 10, because they're neutral in many ways and they're quite positive in many ways. They're quite expensive, but on the other hand, they could be a potential buy. So once again, let me know what do you think about these pedals, and if you want any more information about these pedals, they're going to be in the link down in the description. So once again, thank you very much for watching, and until the next time, bye.